Okay, so first of all, the term karma means action. So what we actually mean is the results of action, what's sometimes called karmic fruits or karma phalam in Sanskrit. So we're always talking about the consequences of action, and the consequences can be beneficial or non-beneficial. All right. The consequences are completely separate from the concept of the doer, because the doer performs the action and therefore owns the consequences. So when you talk about an individual, when you talk about a soul or anything like that, that is not the consequence, that is the doer, the one performing the action. So these are quite different. So karmic consequences, punya, papa, beneficial and non-beneficial, and there is somebody performing the actions and who is enjoying the consequences of the action, and therefore the consequences belong to the doer. All right. Now, if you believe that we are a series of one object within a world of objects, we are individuals, we are finite, we are born and we die, then you have to explain, why are we different? Why is somebody born different to somebody else, especially in a very similar set of circumstances? Why is somebody born with different faculties, and why are their lives very, very different? And Vedanta says that the way that you perform your life, the way that your life executes, is dependent on three things. One is your location or environment, one is time, and the third one is prarabdha. Prarabdha karma are the consequences that you bring into your life, the karmic results that you bring into your life. In fact, it is the reason that you're born. And you're born in a particular environment with particular set of attributes and skills so that you can execute the prarabdha karma with which you are born. And the moment of birth is, if you like, this execution, this experience of this prarabdha karma starts, and that's why it's often described as an arrow that leaves the bow. It has started, its flight has started, and it will carry on until the momentum of the prarabdha karma disappears, is fully exhausted. And at that moment, the arrow will fall to the ground. Effectively, that life will come to an end.
Is there any connection? So that life's come to an end. Is there any connection between that life and the body that takes up the next bank of karma coming in?
There is, because the body that takes on the next set of karma that comes in has been specifically chosen in order to be the vehicle for the experience necessary to exercise the prarabdha karma with which it was born. You cannot experience something without something to experience it with, i.e. a body in a dualistic environment. All right. Therefore, the body is chosen specifically to match the prarabdha karma that it is to exhaust.
I just wondered, then that means there's a space between one and the other.
Yes.
Didn't we say something about there is no space?
No, when we said there is no space, we did it in the context of the creator, saying the creator and the created cannot have space between them. And therefore, the intelligent cause of the universe and the material cause of the universe cannot have a space in between, because what would be that space? That's what we talked about in the context of space. Here, in the context of karma, although you're born with prarabdha karma and you're born with this particular body, with its particular set of attributes, and in this environment, to this family, to this country, and so forth, that body comes into existence as a result of the need to execute the prarabdha karma with which it came. It's a match.
So if we take the body aside, the physical thing, and we just look at the self as in that self inside that's aware of everything. So if you go back to the body, if you were in that previous body, this self that was aware of everything, then it's aware that this body's like carrying out its karmic imprint, to the end. And then, I know it's infinite, the self that's inside of you, but I'm just trying to work out if there's any connection. When the next body arrives, is there any connection between the true self in you and the true self in the next body?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So this will. Can anybody help her out on the answer to that? Does it seem?
And you understand that some children actually are born and have some memories of their previous existence.
Yes.
And maybe recognise their parents or whatever. And I believe that to be true. But for most of us, we have no recollection or memory. So I feel there must be a continuum.
There is a connection, there is a continuum, but it's not in the idea of the higher self, the Atma within us, all right? Because Atma, the higher self, what you're talking about is the little I, the egotistical I. Right? The one that is inside us, inside our subtle body, inside our mind. The ego that says I, and I am the owner, I am the performer of all of these actions. That ego self in the subtle body, and it is the subtle body because it is imperceptible to our senses. Right? The subtle body is not a physical body, and therefore the subtle body does not endure death as the physical body does. It's the subtle body and the energies, the memories, the emotions within it that can survive death. All right. And it's this subtle body that's known as the transmigrating soul. This subtle body, remember, is the owner of the karmic actions. Because the ego I always says, I am doing, I am running, right? I'm giving, I'm taking away, I'm seeing, I'm hearing. That is the ego I talking. It is the owner, all right? And therefore the owner then takes responsibility for the karmic results. And that owner can transmigrate into another body which has been specifically designed to exhaust the prarabdha karma with which it was born. That's why we can take the energies of one life into another life, because it comes as part of the subtle body.
Would that explain like child property?
That would explain things like the properties that you had in a previous life, non-physical, the non-physical properties that you could migrate on from one life to another. That would explain why a child can suddenly speak a language that neither of it's never heard, that it can play a musical instrument in an amazing manner, all right? Or even recall something from a past life. These happen in early childhood because the conditioning of childhood eradicates this as mere stories or whatever. Unless you have a child prodigy, you have a Mozart at the age of 8 who does all of this music.
That's the ego kicking in now, isn't it?
That's the ego kicking in. Because, remember, the doctrine of karma, which cannot be proven, the reason it cannot be proven, unlike everything else in Vedanta, you take the basis as your own personal experience and you build it up from there. The doctrine of karma requires you to know about your life before your birth and your life after your death. Since we are alive now, and neither of these are known to us, it is not provable to us in this birth, okay? It is an explanation, and it is to be taken as an explanation subject to you knowing or hearing something that is better suited to what happens. All right? So it is the explanation if you believe that you are a separate self. Because then you have to understand, where does this separate self go after death? And why is this separate self here in the first place? And the doctrine of karma says the only person that chooses how you are in this life is you. There is no God up there saying, you should be brighter or you should be better looking than that person. You should live in the West with all of these material benefits and not in the East. Nobody, or at this time and not at that time. Nobody does all of that. It is only you. And therefore, it is you, the doer, that is the subtle body, that is the mind, that is ultimately the ego, who is the owner of those karmic results. All right? And we do so throughout our life. Now, you talked about the higher self. So when we talked about who am I many weeks ago, we said that we are not the body, we're not even the mind. We're not even the I that we think we are in the mind, right? There is a higher awareness, which is an infinite awareness, which knows what is being done, what is being thought. All right? If this higher awareness is infinite, means that that's all there is. That's what infinity means, is all there is. Which means that this higher awareness that is me is also the higher awareness that is you. There's only one. This, in the context of the individual, is called Atma. In the context of cosmos, is called Brahman. All right? So if this higher awareness is only one, that means that Atma is not within you, you are within Atma. You are within Brahman. The reason why I cannot, if we are all one, if this higher awareness is all one, how come I don't know what you're thinking? If this ultimate knowing is only one, how come I don't know what you're thinking? It's because the thinking is not happening in the awareness, the thinking is happening in the subtle mind within your body. Right? It's part of your body. It's part of the subtle body that is you, the physical and the subtle body. Those thoughts are happening in your mind. It's as if we have two rooms and the sun is shining from up top. All right? Both rooms have a window. It allows the sun to lighten up, enlighten both rooms. But standing in one room, I do not know what the objects are in this next room. Right? The one sun that is enlightening both areas. Right? This is often described, and the analogy that's often given is a whole series of pots. One sun shining from the top. The pots are of different sizes, all right, different quality, earthenware pots filled at various levels with water. All right? So the pot is denoting our physical body. The water denotes our subtle body. And if you were to look into the pot, you'll see the reflection of the sun. In every pot, you'll see a complete sun. Yet there's only one sun. All right? It comes and reflects in every pot. And as the pots start to leak and the water goes away, so what makes that pot useful drains away, then it's a cracked pot. It's a damaged pot, right? So the body then decays, but that water can flow into another pot and create a new life, a new pot that's been created. The water can go in there, and through that you will see the one Brahman. If this one Atma, because that's all there is, and there is nowhere that it is not, therefore when you die, Atma does not die. It can't do, because that's all there is. All right? Remember, you're trying to think of non-duality, Advaita Vedanta, with a dualistic mind. Because you are an individual, in a land of individuals, you're using language which is by necessity duality. But you're trying to understand a concept which is non-dual.
We're contained.
We're contained. We're contained, and we're trying to understand something that is not contained. So we have a pot, all right? We are the pot. And inside the pot, let's say that the pot is empty, it's got air inside it. We said, oh, we have pot air. That's me, all right? Now, if the pot should disappear, where does the pot air go? All right? The pot air was actually part of just air, just part of space. It just, for a limited time, it had a body around it, so we could call it pot space or pot air. This room, we say this room has got a space of so many cubic meters. All right? This space was here before the room. This room space was part of the space of a lovely green field long before Reading was around. Okay? Yet we made it into a room space, and we call it a room space. But if the walls were to disappear, nothing would happen to the space. It is part of the whole. It's just that in a dualistic environment, we identify it as us.
Our bodies are spaces, a lot of our body is space also. So the same applies when our body's gone. The space that's within ourselves and everything
is part of it. Yeah, that's right. So basically, if Atma pervades everything like it does space, right? So Atma pervades you as well, your bodies. When the bodies disappear, nothing happens to the Atma. It just has nothing to reflect in. There is no reflecting medium. It's like having an electric cable along the wall with a series of light bulbs. You cannot see the electricity, all right? But the bulb illumines. And when the bulb dies, the electricity is still there, but it can't be seen because it's not manifesting as light. So Atma never disappears because it cannot do. If something is infinite, it is all-pervading, it is limitless, it is edgeless. By the way, if something is edgeless, it has no form. Because you need a boundary in order to give something a form. So this infinite is formless, right? It has no shape. We, in our senses, cannot detect anything that is formless, right? It's not that it isn't there, non-existent, it's just that we cannot see it. It is all there is. So do you see in the doctrine of karma, what we are saying is that if you believe in this separate self, then you need an explanation of what happens when you die and what are the circumstances of your birth. You need a full explanation. Otherwise, you have a half story. All right? And that's what the doctrine of karma gives you. It says you're born with prarabdha karma, which is, if you like, a withdrawal from your karmic bank, that you've taken a withdrawal for this life. You've taken it out of the karmic ATM, you've taken your prarabdha out, and you're going to have this life. During life, you perform a whole series of actions which have consequences. This is not prarabdha. You were born with that. You can't get rid of prarabdha. It's already there. All right? But you're now accumulating new karmic consequences that are called agami karma. Some of these things are exhausted during the lifetime. All right? You perform a good action, you feel good within yourself. That's one of the consequences. All right? Immediate consumption. There may be more long-term effects of punya that you build up, which you may or may not exhaust in this lifetime. Because once the prarabdha goes, then the body goes. And you could be holding a bag of agami that has not been exhausted. All right? You do a fantastic deed, all right, which helps thousands of people, and you walk out on the road and you get killed. All right? It's not had a chance, that agami karma hasn't had a chance to exhaust itself into good results for you. Because your prarabdha, which contained the fact that you would die prematurely, has just executed fully. The arrow has stopped. That bag of agami karma you take with you and you bank it in your karmic bank. And the contents of that karmic bank is called sanchita karma. Yes?
It's not just doing the good deed, though, it's doing it without any expectation.
Yes, there is no definition of good or bad in Sanskrit. So there is really only the performance of duty. All right. So everybody talks about their rights. What Vedanta says, that you should perform your duty. Your duty is that which needs to be done rather than that which you want to do. That which needs to be done is your duty. And when you perform your duty, you guarantee the rights of others. It doesn't work the other way around. If you want to work on rights, you have to do it on law. You have to do it on morals and force people to do it. If people perform their duty, rights will automatically be generated for everybody else. All right. So Vedanta talks about performing your duty. Now, when we're in a materialistic world, we perform the actions that are necessary in order to preserve our materialism. Because in a materialistic world, we have a desire to have something else. The materialistic world means that we assume that our happiness comes from outside people, objects, and situations. And what we do is we have a desire to perpetuate that by getting more objects, situations, or more relationships in order to increase our happiness. That is called a materialistic world. And for that, we perform actions that is known as karma. Okay? When you change and start performing the actions that need to be done rather than what you want to do by your desire, then you benefit more people than just yourself. When you perform actions that need to be done rather than what you want to do, you are largely performing actions that will benefit others, maybe as well as yourself, but you're performing actions that is to the benefit of others.
Without expectation of a reward.
Without expectation of a reward. The expectation of a reward has another consequence, which I'll talk about in a moment. But because you perform these actions largely for others, that's what turns you from a karmi somebody who performs karma, to a karma yogi, somebody who performs actions for the good of others. Right? Right. Now, karma yoga, most people think, is a bit of volunteering. All right? It is not. Karma yoga is performing actions that need to be done where the main beneficiaries are not you. That's what karma yoga is. All right. Now, we are in this cycle of desire. Desire leads to action. All right? You want to execute the desire. You want to fulfill the desire, so you perform an action. After the action comes an evaluation. Did I actually do well out of that action? Beneficial or non-beneficial?
Is that your ego making that?
It could be your ego doing it, yeah. In a materialistic world, it's your ego doing it. All right? So we perform that action, then we evaluate that action, right? And that evaluation either gives us, that was good, let's do more of it, or that wasn't so good, we aren't going to do that again. So that generates our likes and our dislikes. All right? And it's our likes and dislikes that generate the next desire. All right? And it's the desire performs the action. So action, evaluation, likes and desires into action again. And we are in this life, in this complete cycle. Continuously. All right?
So the more that you perform and make those decisions, then it's difficult not to produce a stronger ego.
Exactly. Exactly. If those actions are for the benefit of yourself. All right? If those actions are for the benefit of others, all right, then the evaluation could be, did I help others in this process? All right? And if you did, that's fine. Where you dissociate with the result, if you didn't, you say, that's also fine. I meant that action in order to benefit others, but it didn't actually turn up that way. All right? When you dissociate from that result, you're no longer driven by the likes and dislikes that you have, because your likes and dislikes are opinion, and your opinion comes from your mind. Right?
That's the hardest, is likes and dislikes.
The likes and dislikes.
The real.
Because we are opinionated.
And is it because in general we've come from a society that's right and wrong?
We've been taught from an early age what is right and wrong, and we have learnt various things, right, which we believe to be true. And when you believe something to be true, you form an opinion on that truth, right, which cannot be shaken because you have now ingrained it throughout your body. You've worked on it for so long that is not only in your consciousness, but it's in your subconsciousness. And since it's the subconscious that reacts to situations and not your conscious mind, you are forever repeating that opinion.
So is it possible to figure all this out without being on a spiritual path? Because it seems to me that one can only get to grips with this if one is on.
The fact that you're on a spiritual path is defined by the fact when you take the decision that I'm now going to try and do what needs to be done rather than what I want to do. And at that point, you know that you've gone on the fork.
When you say needs to be done,
Yes.
to the benefit of others?
not necessarily for the benefit of others, but most of the time it will be. All right. So any given action, any given situation, you've actually got two paths. You've got what you'd want to do, which is based on your previous experience, what you've done in the past, what has worked or not worked for you, or what needs to be done. Right? In an ethical, and here the word comes in as dharma, in a dharmic manner. Now, dharma has many, many translations, both in Buddhism, Hinduism, so forth. But the best translation that I know in this context is the path of least harm. If you want to know what to do next, then do the path of least harm. Because that's the best action currently open to you.
Because it's not realistic to think harmless, is it?
No, it's not realistic to think harmless. Every step that you take, there's a million bacteria you're squashing under your feet. Right? You cannot be entirely harmless because every consequence has an element which is non-beneficial for someone or something.
We're so interconnected.
Yes.
Any action you perform.
Any action that you perform will have a non-beneficial aspect to something or someone. Yeah. So you take the path of least harm.
So that means that one has to be constantly aware every minute of your life.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. You have to be constantly aware, what am I doing? Right? Live in the moment and taking the path of least harm. What happens though is that as you are very consciously doing this for a period of time, that's why it's called a practice. All right? When you perform this for a time, what you'll find is gradually over time, what needs to be done becomes what you want to do.
Because they say, even when you're asleep, so before you go to bed, that's why a lot of teachers recommend 20 minutes of some practice before you go to sleep, so that that period hopefully will be as harm, you know.
Yes, if you can have thoughts of gratitude. If you have thoughts of gratitude before you go to bed, you are training your mind so when the body falls away and the mind is active in dream state, then you can still be conditioning your mind, your subconscious mind, with such thoughts.
So is it good to meditate before you go to bed?
It is good to not, meditation will actually put you to sleep. So if you want to go to sleep, then meditation before sleep is quite good. Some people do it lying down. The other thing is simply a thought of gratitude. Choose 3 things that have happened during the day for which you are grateful. Right? For which you thank the Lord. Now remember, we talked about the Lord being Ishvara. All right? So the Lord, why do we say by the grace of God? Why do we use that expression? So what has the Lord got to do with the actions and the results of the actions that I've got to make?
Without grace, one, well, doesn't achieve or can't.
Right, but why? Do you remember my bus stop story?
The consequence. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So for everything that we go to perform, there are 4 outcomes. What are the 4 outcomes? As expected, better than expected, worse than expected, and complete opposite. All right? So we perform an action, we are not responsible for the result. That happens due to all the other things that are there. All the laws of nature, all the other objects in the world that are totally interconnected. I initiate the action through my will. All right? And the results are given to me as if prasada. It's actually given to me as a plateful of prasada at a temple would be taken, an offering. All right? So I accept the offering that is given to me. I initiated the action, and I accept the offering because the offering comes from the cumulative actions of the universe. All right? And the cumulative actions of the universe can only come from one source, that's Brahman. So the Brahman, in the mode of creating the universe, is called Ishvara. So I give thanks to the Lord for everything that has happened to me today, not for what I've initiated, but what has been the result that has come back. All right? Knowing full well, with my Advaita mind, that this thing that I call the all-knowing Lord is also the basis of me. This one underlying reality, if that is all there is, it is also the underlying reality of me. There is no difference. It is that awareness, the one awareness that is everywhere. And that is the ultimate I in the higher self.
So everything that's happened today covers everything. The things that we say we like and dislike, because there's no difference. We just give thanks.
We just give thanks for it. And once you can give thanks for whatever comes to you, you've acquired dispassion. All right? Dispassion for what happens. You're not attached to the result. It doesn't stop you performing the next action in order to achieve what needs to be done. All right? But you're dispassionate about the result. And once you can be, it means that you've controlled your opinion. You've started to control your mind. It's much, much clearer now to be able to think about what needs to be done next. Much, much clearer. It's a practice. And the very fact that you do this over and over and over again, it builds into you. It's like becoming, first of all, physical muscle memory, and then it's mental muscle memory as it goes into the subconscious.
So this is where free will comes in, because if there's always two paths, and you can choose to do that one or that one.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
free will.
Yes.
Within the context.
Within that context, our free will is the free will to initiate an action. All right? Very few plants, creatures are given that free will, right? We have to exercise it. That's why we can make it all go wrong. That's why the planet is the way it is, because we exercise our free will. All right? Remember, most people think that freedom is the ability to do whatever you want. That's not freedom, because what you want to do is controlled by your mind. So the body does what the mind wants to do. It's called slavery. That's not freedom, right? Freedom is to be able to choose. Freedom is the ability to be able to abuse a situation and not do so. That's real freedom. When you've used your power of will to make a choice in an environment where your choice can be abuse of the situation. You've used that freedom because you know both paths. You've made a choice. You're free to choose, not just follow your mind on what you want to do.
Could be a whole life's practice, just that one thing.
It could be a whole life's practice, just that one thing of doing what needs to be done rather than what I want to do. The beauty of it is, after actually a relatively short period of time, the two merge together, right? And that's why one gets to a state of happiness when the ups and downs of life have diminished. The samsara, as they call it, of life, has diminished because you are doing the very best of what can be done and you're not attached to the result. Because at the moment that the result comes in, you no longer evaluate because you're in a position to be able to say, what's the thing that I must do now? And you go on to the next operation. As a result, you don't have those likes and dislikes in your mind. You don't have negative thoughts, and the word should has disappeared from your vocabulary. I should have done this. You should have done this. You should not have done this. Because that's opinion.
Okay, so if we choose a wrong path on whatever occasion, and afterwards you say, I should have done this, so you're realising you made a mistake, does that somehow, well yes, hopefully you wouldn't make the same mistake again.
Hindsight is a perfect 20/20 vision. When we perform an action, even when we think is the best form of action, what needs to be done, it may not have been because I was unaware of situations when I made that choice. So you go into the future and with hindsight you said, that appeared to be the best thing that I could have done. But in fact it turned out not to be. And then you can use that experience.
If you don't repeat the same mistake again, which I find really hard because I just go through life repeating the same thing. But eventually, I suppose that, yeah, you stop making that mistake. If not in this lifetime, in the next.
You stop making that mistake because you evaluate whether it's beneficial or non-beneficial. And then you can learn from that experience the difference between the results of karmic actions and the results of a karma yogi actions is that when you perform karma in a materialistic world, you're judged on the result of your actions. How much money have you created? How much happiness have you created by acquiring something or whatever? All right? And if you don't have those things, you're seen to be a failure. For a karma yogi who's not attached to the result, all right? He's more interested in the process of doing. And that's where the happiness comes from. That's what success is evaluated by. It's the process of doing rather than the having done.
So that's why there's a phrase, give up on this life. Before you give up on this life, you can't truly start a spiritual path because once you hold the life, you're already accepting there's your result, what you've done, the result, you're holding on
Yes.
to that result.
You're attaching to those results.
Because at some point, there's no
Yes.
value of this life, is there?
That's why it's a spiritual journey. It's a spiritual path. It's not a spiritual result or destination. All right? Your experience of doing what needs to be done is your spiritual path.
And we're trying to do all of this within our body and
Within our body and our mind, because only our body and our mind are capable of actions. All right? And
It's like switching it around, isn't it? And like taking control over the mind and the body rather than the senses and running up the other way.
exactly. So without the senses coming to you and say, do this, it'll be really good, you're now going at a much higher level, right? You're analyzing every action that you do because everybody knows the difference between right and wrong, right? They don't have to be taught. People don't want to be hurt. Therefore, they know that it's wrong to be hurt, and therefore it's wrong to hurt others. These are basic characteristics that everybody knows. You don't want to be lied to, right? People know it's wrong to be lied to, therefore I should not lie to others. These are known by everybody. It's a very simple set of rules that you can apply. What is the path of least harm from now?
But no, it's not simple because you choose the easiest path, which may be to lie at that point in time because it gets the result that you're looking for.
Yes.
So it's not easy in that sense.
Well, if you choose the easy path that gets the result that you're looking for, if you're stuck, if you're attached to your mind and body as being you, right? Once you can think slightly higher and say, this is a mind and body I'm currently looking after, I'm currently manifesting in. And when this bulb fuses, there'll be another light bulb for me to manifest in. When you go from the mortal to the immortal state, it no longer matters to you what you achieve materialistically in this life. It can't do, because you're immortal, right? It's like having a car. You know sooner or later the car will be changed. You can be attached to it all you like for a while, right? But if it's got a scratch, you can say, oh, well, at least I've not been scratched. The car has been scratched.
It drastically reduces the fear, doesn't it?
It drastically reduces the fear, because the greatest fear we have is of death. That death will be the end of everything, of everything. And the death is the end of all objects. Everything in the world that is an object comes to be, has a lifetime, and then dies. Right? Everything follows that cycle. That's why in order to understand this and get it over to the vast public, in Hinduism, they have a god associated with each of these stages. The three primary gods, right, is Brahma, the god of creation, then Vishnu, the god of sustenance, and Shiva, the god of dissolution. In order to try and explain this fundamental concept, they held it up to an idol and say, if you focus on that, you might get it, even if you aren't intellectually bright enough to understand that that is what is happening. You have a visual count of what is happening. All right. So these are all fundamental things that but the whole time you're grappling with this major question. And the major question is that all of your experience is in a dualistic world, is using language, all right, where you think you are separate from everybody else, from all other objects in the world, right? The world is separate from you. And because there are all of these objects, there are things that you have not provided. Perhaps there is a higher force that's providing these objects. All right. Vedanta says there is a higher force. There's only one thing that is infinite, called Brahman, and everything is that. Now, that is in the context of a Advaita Vedanta, non-dual. But because you're in a dualistic world, that word Brahman is replaced by Ishvara, because Ishvara has the power to create. So you say everything in the world is Ishvara, including ourselves. So when you perform an action, and you perform it against another individual, you know that fundamentally the underlying reality of that individual is the same underlying reality as you. Who are you going to harm? Yeah, and it can't be harmed. That which is not real can never come to be. That which is real can never cease to be. Right? Wonderful, wonderful verse in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 16. Fabulous. Right? It says that which, remember our definition of reality?
Yes. Exists in the present, past, present.
That which exists in all periods of time is called real. Right? And the Sanskrit word for that was satyam. Right? And that which is not real is called mithya. Another way we talked about it, that which is not real is a dependent reality. So the pot is dependent upon the clay. It borrows its existence from the clay. If there is no clay, there is no pot. It doesn't work the other way around. Without the pot, there'll still be clay. The table is mithya. It borrows its existence from the wood. The wood is satyam. It can exist independent of the table. It has an independent existence. All right? The table has a dependent existence, is mithya. Right? The wood will always be. It can never not be. Even if you break the table and make a chair, the wood always is. All right? The table was dependent, it had a borrowed existence in the first place. It never was. It can never have an existence of its own. So that which is real can never cease to be. That which is unreal never has an existence of its own. So we, as the underlying Brahman, this is our reality. We can never cease to be. Right? And this mithya of this mind and body, right, has no existence of its own. It's a borrowed existence from the underlying Brahman. It's just like a table. That's why we give it a name. That's why we have a form. We borrow our existence from that. All right? It's not a difficult concept. It says we're all one. There's only one thing, and that is everything. The words are there because we have to eradicate the years and years of conditioning where we've lived in this dualistic world and we've built up this idea in our mind, this opinion, right? It's eradicating that into this fundamental thinking based on our experience. People don't say, Advaita doesn't say, this is faith, accept it. Right? It goes through the logic of your own personal experience. Right? Is this a table? And you can prove to yourself, no, this may look like a table, it may function like a table, it has a transactional reality, it's an apparent really table, but actually it has no substance of its own. Right? And when you see the world, not for the non-substantial that you see, but the substantial that you can never see, the underlying reality. That's when you've turned from the normal to the enlightened. You can see the world exactly the way it is, but understand what is the underlying reality of that world. Okay?
I think we get flashes of it, don't we? You know, we do feel it, but it's fleeting.
Yeah, and we even in our normal experience, in our dualistic experience, there are moments, we get moments of supreme joy, right? Like, you know, your eyes are closed and there's the favorite piece of your music has just come on, and for that fleeting moment, you get that moment of extreme joy, and the reason you get it is because there's no other thought in your head. What was stopping all the joy in your mind and body was the thought in your head. When that is eradicated for a fleeting moment, or when you see a baby smile, you've got nothing else that's going on. That supreme level of happiness, we know, we've all experienced it. And that's what we want more of. In fact, that's what we want permanently.
And when we're trying to hang on to that, that's the thought that destroys it.
It does.
Trying to analyze.
Because you've attached onto it. Yeah, you've attached onto it. The reason why we try and keep it going is because we think the happiness is derived from the music. The happiness is derived from the baby's smile. It's not. The happiness is internal. It happened to be triggered by those events. Because those events eradicated the thought patterns that were stopping my happiness from shining through. If happiness is in a pistachio ice cream, then there would be a lot more happiness with a gallon of ice cream than there is with a scoop. All right? And there clearly isn't.
No, we throw it out.
That's right. So the happiness is not in the ice cream, it's in ourselves. And what stops it is our mind, largely the body and the mind. If the body has a pain, then where is the pain being felt? In the mind. All right. Remember that we believe that we're in this world. All right. This world comes to us through our five senses. All right. So light, your image comes to me through my eye. I say, oh, that's you, all right? But actually, it goes to the back of the eye, and it's about 1/4 of an inch high and upside down. That's clearly not you, all right? Then it goes down my optical nerve into my brain, and it fires up some neurons, and you clearly aren't neurons. Then it goes into my visual cortex, all right? And it comes up with something that I can then compare. I pull out a memory, I compare the two, and I say, that's you. So you exist only in my mind. That's with sight. All the other four senses act in the same way. They get attracted through my sense organs, touch, taste, smell, hearing, sight, and gets replayed in my mind as if it's on a big screen, a touchy-feely, smelly screen, right, where I can observe this thing. I say, aha, the world. Am I seeing the world? Where is the world that I see and touch and taste and smell? Where is it? It's in my mind. All right? This entire creation is in my mind. It's only in my mind. All right? And it's in my mind according to the capability of my senses. If I only had black and white vision, it'll be a black and white world. All right?
All of that, your version is different than my version.
Exactly. All the versions are different. And so therefore it's playing in our mind, it's an illusion. Right? And it's delusional to think that the illusion in our mind is the reality that is outside our mind. Because this is the only thing we know. We don't know if the outside world exists. We think that there's probably something out there for me to have an impression of it in my mind, but we have no way of knowing. Because we cannot experience the outside world except in our mind. The whole world exists within you. And you are the awareness of that world. All right? That's why when we have this image of the world in our mind, we then color it. Because we've seen it through rose-tinted glasses. Or we put a little bit of memory behind it. We put a bit of opinion behind it. Suddenly we've changed the world. Our world is different to somebody else's world. Why do they think like that, when the right way to think is the way I think? Right? It's all an illusion. And that's why they say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Because we see the screen in our mind, and we put in our intellect and ego upon it, and our opinion and our memory, and our emotions, and we make a world out of it. It is our world. It is all made up in our minds. Right? And we think that's so important. This illusionary world that's made up in our mind, it is so important that we're willing to go and attack people for it. We're willing to go to war. We're willing to do anything to preserve this illusion as being the correct illusion in our mind. That's why it's so small when you think about it. It's so insignificant. Because in order for there to be a projection in your mind, there must be somebody in the audience watching. Right? I am the watcher. I am the experiencer. I'm not the experienced. And I don't participate in the experience. I'm the experiencer. I'm the knower. I'm not the known. I take no part in that activity. But without me, that awareness would not be there. Therefore, there would be nothing without me. If there was no awareness, just think of, right? If you weren't aware of something, would that exist? I am the experiencer. I'm not the experienced. And when this starts to get to you, you're thinking on a much more grand scale than thinking about I'm the ego I, who's sitting in a very comfy seat in front of a really big television that is the world playing out in front of me. It's my world. Come into my cinema room and see my world playing out to me. I'm the little I. You're the bigger I. Because without you, it doesn't happen. You play no part in it. You're unaffected by it. That's why another analogy that's often used is one of the screen itself. When you go to a movie, all right? Blank screen, then comes on the film. All sorts of action, blood and guts, action, shooting, everything's happening on this screen, all right? Any harm coming to the screen? No. Would you be able to see the movie without the screen? No. So what is the underlying reality that allows all of it, light and sound, to play out? Is the screen. Do you participate in the movie? Does the screen participate in the movie? No. Would the movie happen without the screen? No. Right. That one screen is that infinite Atma, infinite Brahman, on which life temporarily plays. Right. Without it, there would be no movie. If you can think higher up that you are the screen, you're not the individual playing in the movie, then you can move from materialism to a spiritual life.
We feel that we exist because through other people. So if you get to that stage, you could live totally on your own and know that you don't have to see yourself reflect.
It wouldn't matter to you whether you were alone or with others, right? It's of inconsequence. It's like saying, I could live with a pink chair or a blue chair. It really doesn't matter. But you've got to get into that state of mind that says, and there's two things that you need to do. First of all, and this is what I did about 20 years ago, I said to myself, what if everything I currently know is wrong? Everything that I currently know, you're a reasonably educated person, right? An engineer. What if everything you currently know is wrong? And that allows you to do a reset. That removes opinion, because you cannot form an opinion on something you don't truly believe in. If you've already said there's the potential for everything I know to be wrong, I can no longer have an opinion. An opinion that's correct. Because it could be based on an underlying error. All right? That's a good reset to make. What if everything that I know is wrong? And once you lose that opinion, once you lose your strong desire for likes and dislikes, you're well on the way. Really well on the way to where you want to go. And you want to get there, otherwise you wouldn't be here. All right? You are a seeker. The very fact that you're in this room now means that you want to go. You realize that there's something more and you want to get there. And you want the tools and the processes to be able to do so, to be able to understand it for yourself, not particularly for anyone else, just the individual.
Yeah, you're sort of there already, aren't you?
Who's there already?
We all are.
Well, that's the thing. That's the classic, that we are all trying to get to somewhere that we're already fully there. It's just that we're ignorant in thinking that we haven't reached it yet. Because if there is one all-pervading thing, then that is all there is. It's no question of not having it or not being there.
We think we need to run around. And
that's right.
Just need to relax.
Yeah. Relax and broaden your mind.
Relax, yeah, be open.
That's right, and be open. Because the intellect is the only place where this can be realized, because this is our thinking vehicle, right? So it has to be performed in the subtle body, in the mind, which is in close proximity to where the problem is, the ignorance is. The knowledge has to come in the same place where the ignorance is, because the ignorance has got to be replaced by that knowledge, by that certainty.
Let's talk about like the different bodies. So you've got the mind and then you've got the knowledge.
Yes.
So is that what we're talking about? We're moving away from the sort of beyond the mind into the knowledge.
So they talk about, we can do on another occasion, they talk about the different, what's called koshas, right? These are the layers of the body, the 5 fundamental layers of the body. And yes, at the top, at the 4th level, you've got the level of the intellect, all right, which is 1 level higher than the mind, and 1 level below that of the bliss. Yes, there's these 5 layers. And so the intellect is the 4th layer, and we can do that on another week. Because the mind, in that case, the Manomaya Kosha is the 3rd layer. That is the layer of the mind. The mind is there for us to acquire all of this sensory input. All right. Is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellectual kosha, that discerns, turns that information into knowledge. And that's where the intellect and the ego reside.
So we'll have to have the mind level to bring it all in.
Yes.
Before we can make sense of it.
Before we can make sense of it.
Right. So, because it can be quite distracting, obviously, the mind, can't it?
Yeah, it can be distracting.
From the whole point.
That's right. And it's meant to pull us away from all of those, because these are all the distractions that come in, and because largely we can't shut off the mind, right? You can't say, no, I'm not going to hear your next word, Ram. It's not going to happen, right? You can be distracted so that you hear what I say, but you don't analyze the sound that's come in, so you don't understand what has been heard. You can be distracted, but you can't stop the hearing. Because it happens at different levels of again, it's an explanation of the way that we are. We can do that another week. Any other questions? We didn't really go through what I'd prepared, but that's all right. And so there would be no notes from this week. We'll just have to post the video.
This has been a great clarifier.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think beneficial, non-beneficial, least harmful change, should into could. It's just the 2 little things.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah, very little things.
it's just a tweak, isn't it?
I'm sitting there thinking about the washing up thing.
Well, yes, that's what needs to be done, and largely the beneficiary is not you. So the rights of others, the right to be able to wear clean clothes, is done because you perform your duty.
Yeah.
That sounds like my meditation.
Yeah. But it's so hard, isn't it? Because the further you feel, and this is ego again, that you're going further down your path, you compare others to you.
Yes.
And you blow it straight away.
Right.
Yeah, and I have great difficulty with hearing you are perfect just the way you are, which is what you've been saying. Because all you can think about is all your imperfections.
That's right. Yes.
I've never been able to kind of figure that one out.
Yes.
Or
And so, all right. I'll leave you with one more analogy. All right. Because we've done a lot today. I'll leave you with one more as to why does the ego thinks is the great I? All right. Why does the ego think it is the I and there is nothing above it? Why does it think it's the doer? All right. And there is not this Atma that is at the greater level. And the analogy that's been given is that, say that this room is, the lights weren't on, say, but this room would still be lit with diffused light. because of the sun, all right, coming in through various things. There would be a diffused level of light around the room by which we could see the room, all right? And say that the sun was shining, and I went to a window and I took a mirror and I shone the sunlight through the mirror onto one of the walls. Now, what would I see on the wall? Light. Rays. I would see, say if it was a rectangular mirror, I would see a rectangular of very bright light surrounded by the diffused light around. All right? Does everybody get that analogy? What is actually in that space of that bright light? It is the reflected light, which is very strong because it's sunlight. Actually, behind it is the diffused light. Correct? Because I hadn't removed the diffused light, I've just shone a brighter light over it.
So the E was brighter than the...
Even brighter than the diffused light is this strong light, and when you look at it, you say, oh, God, that's a bright light. Right? Where did the diffused light come from? The sun. Where did the bright light come from? The sun. They're both shining on the same location, yet our focus seems to be on the bright little rectangle. All right? So our mind is the reflecting medium, is the mirror for Brahman's light. And it illumines our mind, and it is so bright compared to the diffused light around it that the mind says, I did that. The mind is the reflecting medium, it's the mirror. And the reason why some of us are brighter than others is because sometimes this mirror is larger, smaller, dirty, foggy, clear. And the light shines, it illumines our mind, and the mirror says, I did that. Did it? No. It happened to be there to reflect the light of the sun, the ultimate Brahman. That's why it seems to be so overpowering compared to everything else. That's why the little I takes on such a dominant role. Because when you look at that wall, you think, oh, the light on there is from the mirror. But it's both. And its source is identical. This is what enlivens an inert mind with consciousness. Consciousness in the mind is borrowed from the consciousness of Brahman. Right. So that's the one to contemplate in the bath tomorrow.